So I'm Jennifer. I work at Ericsson as climate action lead. But before all that, I did my master's at KTH, and I have a background in environmental engineering. So for my master thesis, I wrote about this topic and had Mattias and Pernilla Bergmark, Mattias is sitting right there, as my supervisors. And then after that, we added to it, we refined it, and we published it in the Journal of Environmental Management in December. So there you have some background. And I heard before that not everyone is familiar with the planetary boundaries. And there's a lot of discussions right now about net zero and climate change, and everyone is here knows that it's a super important topic, but it doesn't solve all our problems. And the planetary boundaries have been defined as 9 ones by Johan Rockström and others, with a safe operating space that we should very much act to remain within, and we haven't done great. So in this picture you can see the green section, which is this safe operating space, and we have transgressed a lot of these boundaries. And during the time that we wrote this paper, we actually transgressed a few more. So we're not doing a really good job. So my question and the aim of this paper was then, how are we going to exist within the safe operating space if we do not take the planetary boundaries into consideration in our decision making? And we aim to help companies do that by defining proxy indicators that can be used by companies to report on indicators that are founded on the planetary boundaries framework and report on them over time to see that they're reducing their impact. And doing this, we had like 3 main steps. So first we have a literature review where we went through more than, or maybe I should say, went through more than 200 articles, but also complementary gray literature and some internal Ericsson reports, but mostly external information. And then we also had an additional review to complement biodiversity, because it's critical, but it's also very complex. So that needed some extra work. And then we had some interviews with Houdini Sportswear. They have done something similar, but in the clothing and apparel context, while we were focusing on ICT companies. And then we also talked to Future Earth. They have done quite a bit in this area as well, but also not in the context of ICT companies. And then we also had internal interviews with Ericsson, to test these proxies that we defined. And yes, and then to the most important part, the development of the proxies. So we had 2 main criteria for this. Firstly, the proxies should be based on the planetary boundaries framework. And then secondly, they should be practically implementable by ICT companies so that they can actually be used in practice. And then we also defined the spatial and temporal granularity for each of these proxies. So how often they should be reported upon, but also at what scale. So for example, should it be reported on at each company site, or is it enough if it's just the total company picture, or anything else in between? So now I'm going to show you a picture. It's quite a lot. I'm not going to talk about all of the proxies. I don't have time for that. But to summarize, we defined 1 to 3 proxies for each planetary boundary that can be measured and reported upon over time. Let's leave it at that. And then to test out these proxies, we try them upon 1 ICT company, the one I work for, Ericsson, to see what are we doing right now. And I try to make it easy to understand, but I'm not a graphical, I don't work with that. So the colors here, they represent green is sufficient, like everything is up to date, perfect. You could apply the proxies right away. Yellow means that there is minor refinements needed, And then red, major refinements. Basically, there is no data about this currently. And I want to add a comment about the major refinements. So saying that there's no data is not necessarily something bad. It might also be that it's not relevant for that specific company. So it's, yeah, and as you can see here, 2 of the proxies were already covered. So for climate change, that's carbon dioxide emissions. I mean, most companies have come quite far in this area already. And then we also have the use of chemicals, which is reported quite well. Yeah, and then there were 6 proxies where there was no applicable data at this point. And now I can't remember how many. Yeah, 14 of the proxies require additional granularity, or they're measuring parts of the criteria, but they don't cover all of them. So the amount of work that's needed there varies quite a bit. But yeah, so there's some things that can be done here. Yeah, I think I'm like before my time, but then I have some last reflections. So this, what do you want to call it? This reporting tool that we defined, it does only cover the direct operation of the ICT companies and not scope 3, as you can translate it, even though we kind of fell into there sometimes and had to step back. So it will not cover the full picture, so more work is needed in order to capture that. And also, we did not try to downscale the planetary boundary framework onto a company level and be able to assign companies their fair share, because that's very difficult to do. The planetary boundaries are defined either at the global scale or at the regional one. And in order to do that, you would need to take into consideration social aspects, and that's a lot. So for now, I think it would be a good step to just start taking these planetary boundaries into consideration so that we can continue to exist together with all the Earth system processes in function. Yeah. It was a lot quicker.